Too good to be true.
Yeah, it was indeed. Yeah. Good morning. So let us continue. So the last thing we saw, I think we finished the tshuva from Rabbi Yosef. We're going to move on today to an exploration, a beginning of an exploration of some of the lomdus. Okay, some of the principles. So we've already encountered some of it to some extent, but today we will delve into it a little bit more.
If we go past source 23, I would need to make another copy if you don't mind.
I have here. I put here for you. Okay?
Amazing.
Right, weiter. Now what we're going to do today is we're going to begin to examine in a little bit more depth the lomdus, the rationale, the principles, the reasoning upon which we have this, what clearly appears to be the majority opinion as we stand at the moment. We are going to introduce Rabbi Yashiv's opinion and others, and we'll look at some of the Piskei Botei Din Rabbaniyim from Eretz Yisrael to see how they paskin halacha l'maisa. And we also, of course, as always, have to. And the reason why it's so important to have the rationale and the reasoning is because we have to then ask ourselves if the Rishonim or the Gedolei HaAcharonim say that the reason, for example, that we don't ask somebody, we don't demand of somebody to prove that they are Jewish because it's based on a roiv. Well, first of all, what we're going to see today is which type of roiv. There is more than one type of roiv. And does that apply today to the mass immigration that took place in the 90s from the former Soviet Union? Does the migu still work? Is there an economic advantage? See, there was a time and place when, for example, Rabbi Yashiv was of the opinion, certainly prior to 1980, where if a Jew had on their birth certificate in the Soviet Union, Jew, that in itself was very strong grounds to assume and to rely on the fact that they're indeed Jewish, because it made no sense. It was basically a death sentence for your career. It meant you had to become either a refusnik, you couldn't get into university, you were disadvantaging yourself. There would be no sane reason why a person would do that unless they were indeed Jewish. There was no advantage to it. Mm-hmm. That, of course, changed when the Soviet Union collapsed. So today the person would say, just because you have on your birth certificate, if you're born today in Russia and you put Jew on it, it means, if anything, it's exactly. And you guys, you know this better than I do, that concept, right? So this is where we're going to go. Let me introduce, let's remind ourselves Rabbeinu Tam. Let's go back to the beginning. Rabbeinu Tam, we had Tosfos in Yevamos and Tosfos in Psachim, right? Mm-hmm. So let's just go over that again, quickly. Tosfos in Yevamos, Omer Rabbeinu Tam says that when the Muchzak Klach says Rabbeinu Tam, source 3, going right back to the beginning, just a quick chazara, yes? Says Rabbeinu Tam, because otherwise there would be a migu. And as you see, says Rabbeinu Tam, you see from the Gemara at the beginning of Psachim, which we discussed, yes? Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, the guy is able to infiltrate the eating of the Korban Pesach, and nobody questions his credentials, and he gets to Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira very cleverly works out how to trip him up by asking for the aliyah, as we saw. The ein loymar deshani hosam davasamcha aruba dahavi Yisrael. Says Rabbeinu Tam, well, maybe there it's different. Maybe you can't bring a proof from there. That's the story in the Gemara Psachim. Why? Because most people who eat from the Korban Pesach who are present, of course, are Jewish. So we have a rive that we can rely on. Whereas perhaps when in a general situation, when somebody comes and says they're Jewish, they're coming from a population which is predominantly non-Jewish. So maybe we can't rely on that. Says Tosfos, no. The roiv haboin lefonenu b'toras Yahadus Yisrael. Most, right, the end of source 3. Most of people who present themselves, let's say 1,000 people a year present themselves and claiming to be Jewish. At least in those times, we have a roiv. The roiv is that most people who present themselves and say we are Jewish turn out actually to be Jewish. So we can rely on that. And that is how Rabbeinu Tam holds in Tosfos and Yevamos. Question for you. Let's analyze this sort of rove. What sort of rove is this? It actually has a technical name.
Like empirical?
Is it empirical?
I don't know.
Is it statistical? Is it... So it would appear to be, for the moment we're going to take on the following. For the moment, we're going to call this, in halacha, it is generally called ruba de lesser kamon. Now, who can translate that? Forgive me, I need to have some water. I forgot to bring a cup. Please forgive me drinking from the bottle.
There's a cup.
Oh, there's a cup
Yeah,
here?
right.
Okay,
Yes,
awesome.
okay.
Everything handy.
Very handy. Amazing. Okay, shkaya.
Ruba,
So, ruba de lesser kaman, de leta kaman, spelled dalet, lamed, yud, tof, aleph, kaman, kuf, mem, nun. You need to know this term. Where are your notes? What happened? Do you have a book? No?
Yes.
You're slipping. What's happening, my friend? Baruch atah Adonai. You had one, no? Didn't you have a...
My wife took my key, so I can't open the locker.
The
It's
wife,
not an excuse.
mate.
No.
No, so seriously, guys, it's important, and for your own sake, not for me. There's no mivchanim on this. There's no tests on this, but these are really, because we're covering it in a way that's not just relevant to this, but it's broad general knowledge as well, which hopefully will be useful in so many different contexts. And this is one of the most important Lomdisha concepts, yes, which comes out of Sugis and Ksubas and elsewhere. So let's get this straight. Right, the Torah says Acharei Rabim Lahatos. Really, we should do a separate shir on this, but the Torah says follow Rov. Acharei Rabim, follow Rov. In which context does the Torah say you follow Rov?
So when
What's the context?
the majority of our sages or our rulers,
Within the context,
right,
correct, of Sanhedrin, of Dayanim, right? You have two Dayanim say Tome, one says Tahor. The halacha is follow the majority. We could stop and ask ourselves a very interesting question. Is this logical? Just because they're more, does that mean they're right? How does it work? We also need to ask ourselves, Bittul Barov. You've heard of Bittul Barov. We also learn that from the same pasuk. There's a beautiful Reb Chaim Brisker to explain how the two are connected conceptually. Maybe we'll do a, yeah?
but it sounds interesting because in this case, which Ben Tom explained, was that because the majority of people who come and claim to be Jewish, it's like the other way around.
Great! Oh, I love it. You're thinking like that's a Yiddish cop. Gewaldig. Fantastic. It's spot on, my friend, as we say. Let me give it to you in the following way, in Yeshivish. Let me give it to you in Yeshivish. To speak Yeshivish, there is Ruba de Isa Kamon and Ruba de Lesser Kamon, or de Ita, depending on how you pronounce it. Dalad Aleph, Yud, Tof, Aleph, Kuf Nun, or Ruba de Lesser Kamon.
Right.
There is and there is not. Exactly. What's the pshat? As follows. Ruba de Isa Kamon means there is a rove right here in front of us. Classic example, I have 3 pieces of meat in front of me. When you get to learn Yeridei Simon Kuf Yud here, you will take a set of notes. When you get to learn Kuf Yud, you'll see this. It's beautiful. It's fantastic. But for the moment, that would be a classic case, and we're going to do a bit more work on this. 3 pieces of meat in front of me. I know that 2 of them are kosher. That is a rove that is right there in front of my eyes. And then we have this other rove, which is the rove of Rabbeinu Tam. Rove, let's say rove people in a population. Do I have everybody in Russia in front of me at the moment? Of course not. You and I would probably call this, I say this word with a little bit of caution, but we would call it statistical. It's statistics. It's a probability. Okay? And if you know your quantum mechanics, you will know really that all of life is actually, all the rules of physics today, it's all about probabilities. certainly at the subatomic level, but that's another whole schmooze. As opposed to classic Newtonian physics, which is above the atom level, where it's the opposite. It's deterministic, etc. So that's called Ruba de Lesser on statistics. Question: Rabbeinu Tam, Roiv haboyin lefonenu b'toiras Yahadus Yisrael. Most people who present themselves with a claim, an identity claim that they are Jewish, turn out indeed to be Jewish. Is that Ruba de Issa Kamon or Ruba de Lesser Kamon? Ruba de Lesser Kamon. Great. Okay? So far, so good. So basically, we're saying, when Tosfos says Roiv, he means the Ruba de Lesser Kamon, which is a statistical majority. Okay?
Is there a principle that we can say that if we have a Rov de Leta command, that even more so we would hold in
We're going to get to that. Very good. Very good. Very good. I'm going to hold fire on that one because it can become quite interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Let's look again very briefly at Tosfos, source 4, Tosfos in Psachim. Let's go, because we had Rabbeinu Tam, that was source 3. Let's look at source 4 now. Let's look again, examine. We haven't done it for a while. Let's look at that Tosfos again. Yes?
Mm-hmm.
Got that? What did Tosfos say? He says, Tosfos, don't bring the very thing that Rabbeinu Tam did use as a raya, as a proof, to say that somebody who presents themselves and says Jewish, we believe them. Tosfos used this Gemara as the locus classicus, yes, as the proof text, to say that somebody who presents themselves as Jewish, we accept them on the basis of a raya. Says Tosfos, ein loima. Says Tosfos here in Psachim, no. That's no proof. Why is it no proof? It's different. Deroiv Yisrael Hayu, because most of the people there, present, de Isa Kamon, they were Jewish there. But you don't have that when you have a person coming from a mass, a general population. Yeah? Just a second. I don't understand. What happened? What is the machlekes here between Tosfos? We have a machlekes here between two Tosfos. Tosfos in Yevamos, Rabbeinu Tam, and Tosfos here in Psachim. What is the machlekes?
Basically, it's like one says there is different statistic for different places, different statistics which we can rely on in the laser, in the row. So in source 3 we say, okay, like the statistics are true and we can rely on that. Here we say, no, you cannot apply those statistics to every place.
Why not? Why? No,
rather,
why not? Well, let me just explore what can be saying.
In source 3 we rely on a certain place where there always was this right empirically. And now we say, no, that's not always the case.
So let me just remind you, just refresh your memory briefly. In Tosfos in Psachim, Tosfos in Yevamos, Rabbeinu Tam said, he brought this Gemara Psachim as a proof text that we rely on Rav. He then challenges himself and says, maybe they're different. Yes, they are different. Mm-hmm. One is a Ruba de Isa Kamon, one is a Ruba de Lesser Kamon, like you said. Mm-hmm. In Yerushalayim on Seder night, most people in Yerushalayim on Seder night are Jewish. That is a Ruba de Isa Kamon. Maybe you can't apply that. Rabbeinu Tam challenged himself and said, maybe I can't apply that to somebody who rocks up from Uzbekistan. Yeah? Yeah. Says Tosfos, no, it doesn't matter. It's all a rave. Iceberg, Goldberg, the Titanic joke. It's all the same. Yeah? No, never mind. You know the joke?
Which one?
Which one? How many Titanic jokes do you know?
I know one that is the Jews' fault.
That's it. Exactly. It's the Jews' fault. Why? It wasn't. It was the iceberg. Iceberg, Goldberg. It's all the same. This is Rabbeinu Tam, Lahavdil. Rabbeinu Tam is saying, Lahavdil. Sorry. You meant to start a shir with a milsa de b'dichus and the Gemara says, no, we're going to put a smile on everybody's face and then we can learn. So Rabbeinu Tam says to himself, maybe it's not a parallel, because there it's a Ruba de Isa Kamon. Whereas when somebody shows up from Moscow, whatever, it's a Ruba de Lesser Kamon. Says, no, it's the same, it's fine. Doesn't matter. Because most people who present themselves as Jewish end up being Jewish. So Tosfos is quite happy. Rabbeinu Tam is really happy to say that we are prepared to accept Jews on the basis of which drive?
Lisa.
Rabbi Delessa come on. Tosfos in Pesachim says, no, this Gemara is not a proof text. Do you know why? Because this Gemara in Pesachim is talking about Ruba de Isa come on, and I, Tosfos, am not prepared to accept what Rabbeinu Tam says, that Ruba de Lessa come on is good enough for Yiddishkeit, to prove that you're... So we have a fundamental machlekes between these two Tosfos as to what would be the entry requirement, quite literally, into Am Yisrael, whether Ruba de Lessa come on is good enough or not. Now, just throw out one more thing. You with me? It's a really important analysis. I'm going to throw out one more important concept, which if you've learned Ksubas, you will know very, very well, hopefully. And we're going to come back and explore it on another day. Teisha Chanuyos, famous scenario where you have 10 shops, 10 butcher shops. 9 of them are kosher, and 1 of them is not kosher. And you find a piece of meat on the straw. It's irrelevant. It could be 5, 6, and 5. It can be. It doesn't. The 5 and 6 and 4. It can be. It's both. It goes both ways around. Teisha chanuyos mocheres basa shchuta or mocheres basa treifa. It's irrelevant. The concept. So what do? I find a piece of meat away from them. The concept is called kol de porish, as opposed to kavua, which we'll leave for another time. Kol de porish, any item that has been separated. 4 words: kol de porish, meruba porish. Anything that has been porish, it has been separated. It has come from a set. Then we look at it and we say meruba porish. It's come from the rive.
So
that needs a little bit of understanding. It needs a lot of understanding. That is probably much more similar to a ruba de isa kamon. It's a rive which is in front of us. Let's learn it like this for the moment. In other words, I don't need to come look at statistics and or probabilities. Kol de porish, meruba porish. Maybe it is a probability, but that's... So we'd have to see where... So we have 3 ideas, and we'll have to see which of them, if at all, overlap, and which of them are going to be relevant over here when we're talking about Birur Yahadus. Okay? So we have Ruba de Isa come on, we have Ruba de Lessa come on, and we have Kol de Porish. Okay? So let's see now, let's continue exploring a little bit.
Rob, one question to that principle. Does it mean that, let's say, you are in Netanya, right?
Yeah.
And you have a lot of kosher butcheries and, let's say, 2 trife ones.
Yeah.
And you find this piece of meat, let's say a salami or something, on the street.
Yep.
You go buy it kosher, even though it might be not.
Yeah. Kol de Porish.
And that's even...
You would have to know that it came from one of them, and they didn't come from somewhere else.
Right.
Technical details. Yes.
This would even be justifying eating in the end what pops out to be a trife salami.
Correct. Well, if the Torah says you can rely on it, you rely on it. Yeah. Okay. Right, when the Torah says you rely on it, you rely on it. Okay, so far so good. Okay, so we have that machlekes. Let's move on. Source 19, right? Chidushe Haran in Pesachim. Yeah. So we've had the machlekes the Tosfos. Says the Ran, Chidushe Haran in Pesachim. Source 19. Va'ano achil l'mishufra d'shufra. Says Tosfos, meho mashma demi. From this says the Ran. Chidushe Haran, meho mashma, from here it's mashma. Demi shabalafon ene ba'amay Yisrael ani ne'emon ve'eino tzarich la raya. Says the Ran, yes, this is a good proof, right? So that's not like Tosfos in Pesachim. It's like Rabbeinu Tam in Tosfos in Yevamos. V'loi teima dafka ki hacha deruba Yisrael. Don't say, says Tosfos, ein loimar. Oh, it's different over there. Why? Because there we have a ruba de isa come on. We have ruba Yisrael ninhu. Ela afilu b'chutz la'aretz derav ruba Yisrael ninhu ne'emon. But he doesn't say why. He says, but this will hold true. We can bring a proof from here, even in a scenario where somebody comes from a mass of population which is not predominantly Jewish. We still say it is mutter. So it's not based on Rov. So if it's not based on Rov, then what is it based on? He doesn't say like Rabbeinu Tam. I want to point out to you, this is really important. You've got to focus, yeah? Tosfos, you've got to know this clearly. Rabbeinu Tam says it is Rov, but it's another Rov. Tosfos in Pesachim says no Rov from here at all. Sorry. The Ran says yes, but he doesn't tell us why. He doesn't say, oh, because, like Rabbeinu Tam says, oh, because there's another Rov at least, because most people who present themselves are Jewish. He doesn't say that. So it's not based on Rov. So Rabbeinu de Kula Alma, what is it based on? Mm-hmm. What on earth is going on? What is the Hezbollah in the Ran? Let's have a look at the Ritva. Source 20. Says the Ritva, here the Ritva is in Yivamas Mem Zayin, Zog the Ritva, Hiksha Rabbeinu Tam Zal, Velehemen b'migudi by Omar Yisrael Ani. He should be believed if the person says, I am a ger. So Frank Rabbeinu Tam, believe him with a migu, he could have said Yisrael Ani. Kinemuchach me'ahu gab goy the solik bachom psachim Yerushalayim ve'kam de psachim hapesha also hapesha hit the tiritz the hocha mayre b'demuchzek lon shu goy. Here there was a reisa. Remember that word? Very important. Yeah, there was a reisa because we knew he was a goy. Halav hachi kolshu b'mam Yisrael Ani ager ani ne'emon v'soimchin al piv l'chol davar. And here says, and the Ritva has a different. I don't know whether it's a different girsa or it's a different. Or I'm not sure if he's actually saying this in the name of Rabbeinu Tam. It sounds like he's saying this in the name of Rabbeinu Tam. We have another version of what Rabbeinu Tam. Look at this, Rabbi Sai. The milsa, the avida, legluya hi, veloy meshake. Zugazun. Milsa, here we are introducing now a new, very important concept, which is a very important concept in halacha. Who wants to translate?
A matter of revealing.
Milsa, the avidi legluya. Kobe. Avidi, what do you think it means? Milsa da'avidi legluya, something that is verifiable. It can be, to use the modern vernacular, it's not going to be fake news. Why? Because it can be fact-checked. I think that's what they say nowadays, right? Mm-hmm. It can be fact-checked. The presumption is that a person is not going to lie if he knows he can and will easily be fact-checked and found out. That is a very important idea in halacha. Milsa da'avidi legluya, a matter that is going to come out. It's going to be revealed. It's a matter of time. It's something that is verifiable.
Definitely it's not a migu.
No, it's a different thing. Right. It's milsa da'avidi legluya. So now, Rabbi say we have a whole new avenue to explore. That the reason, according to Rabbeinu Tam, is a new version. I'm going to check. I didn't check carefully in the new Ritva with the Hagos. Maybe I should have done. I didn't. That the reason we believe is milsa da'avidi legluya. So we have now three possible approaches. Ruba de Isa come on. Well, Ruba de Isa come on is not going to help us. Ruba de Isa come on is not going to help us. We have either Ruba de Lesa come on or we have milsa da'avidi legluya. What's the Ruba de Lesa come on? Roiv haboyim b'toiras Yahadus turn out actually to be Jewish. That's a statistic. Okay? And then we have milsa da'avidi legluya. So the question we need to ask ourselves now, and now I'm going to go to something, our next source is very contemporary, and to see how is this actually used nowadays. This is what you have over here, the next one, source 21, Piskei Din Rabbonim Chelik Tes Amud 375. This is a tshuva that was written by Reb Mordechai Ilan, who is representing the view of the Central Basin of Tel Aviv. Okay? I'm going to introduce you later to some other opinions of modern-day poskim, right down to Rabbi Yashiv, the Chazon Ish, etc. And we need to know that there is, like I say, there's a fast-moving situation. Things have changed the whole time. But let's look at the. I'm sorry, it's small. It's quite small letters, but let's go through this. Okay, let's have a look. So this was the rationale written in Psak Din. I have to find the exact year that it was written. I can do that later. But let's have a look. Nishar lonu levarer. Follow with me, guys, yes? Nishar lonu levarer bamenech leku harishonim. It is left to us to explain what exactly is the basis of the machlokes rishonim. Batam denemanusa shel adam ha'imi Yisrael ani. In other words, look at his starting point. His starting point is we accept. Somebody comes along and says, remember we saw, this was the consensus of the Rishonim, not like the Ramah, etc. Yeah, the consensus is somebody comes along and says, I'm Jewish, he is believed. But why? On what basis? What's the lambdas? What's pshat in the machlokes Rishonim? Those who say that it's because of Raiv and those who say because of Milsa David Legluya. What is the yesod of their machlokes? We find this ne'emonus of Milsa David Legluya in many places in Shas, as I will enumerate. Rosh Hashanah Chof Beis, L'gaben Kiddush HaChodesh, B'chodesh Lamed Vav, by B'chol Balmum, Yevamos Tzadi Gimel, Eidecha B'Yevama, Kuf Tes Vav Amud Aleph, Eidecha B'Milchama, etc. It's a well-established halachic maxim, a principle. It's a concept. Milsa David Legluya. So why are they not relying on it? Why do they go to? So, for example, Tosfos in Pesachim. Let's take for example Tosfos in Pesachim. Tosfos in Pesachim rejects Raiv and says you have to bring him from somewhere else. Why did Tosfos in Pesachim not say that we would believe him on the basis of Milsa David Legluya? I can understand the reason that those Rishonim, so far we have the Ritva, yeah, and possibly the Ran, yeah, the Chedush Ran. Those who said Milsa David Legluya, why did they not explain like Tosfos and the other Rishonim that the Nemonis is midim roiv deheim kosu tam the Nemonis lahiris the nem afilu shein roiv, because it's better. Yeah, what would be if the statistic at some point in time changes? And by the way, there is an argument to say that in the 1990s. I don't know. Does that statistic still hold true today? With 1 million from the former Soviet Union, is it true to say that over 50% of them turn out really to be Jewish? I'm not so sure. I don't actually know. I would speak to the experts in the field. But what would be, hypothetically, if it comes to a point in time where because of economic advantage or for whatever reason, actually it works out that 55% of people who present themselves are actually not Jewish? Then, said these Rishonim, now I'm stuck. So I would rather rely on Milsa David Legluya. If Milsa David Legluya is better than Raiv, it's better than Raiv. That's why they didn't explain like the other Rishonim that it's Raiv. Yeah. But asks Rav Nissim, what? Why did Tosfos and the other Rishonim why did they say mitam roiv, which possibly could be subject to discussion? Why didn't they say Milsa David Legluya? Ul'el havesi brackets. Ul'el havesi chevel poskim imeidecho neman neged roiv. Okay, he said before I discussed a whole bunch of poskim who discuss whether eid echad is neman neged roiv. Fine, weiter. Ulam nira. Next paragraph. The din Milsa David Legluya don matzinim b'shas b'chol adinim hainu kshu Yisrael. He says a nice svara. It's very interesting. He says, when do I say Milsa David Legluya? That is, we say that about a Jew. V'yesh b'zeh nemonos. Do you know why the Jew has nemonos? We know a Yid has nemonos. A Jew's nemonos is based on the fact that it's a Milsa David Legluya because of cheskes kashrus. K'mei shekasu kama maharishonim. There is a starting point, there is an assumption, there is a baseline assumption that a Jew is believed. A Jew has a cheskes kashrus. One of the reasons that he has a cheskes kashrus is because of Milsa David Legluya. But that's because we have a halachic principle that a Jew has a cheskes kashrus. Omnam zeh davka kashehu Yisrael v'abai. Somebody who is a Jew, Yisrael Vadai, so we have Nemonos, he has a Cheskes Kashrus. One of the reasons is because of Milsa David Legluya. On the other hand, if the very shaila that we are discussing is whether he is Jewish or not, Al-Atzad that this fellow is not Jewish, that he has no Cheskes Kashrus. And therefore this whole reason, very interesting he says, This whole concept of Milsa David Legluya is only used as a basis for an established halachic principle that a Jew has a cheskes kashrus. But our whole shaila here is he Jewish or not? And therefore, according to some Rishonim, that isn't good enough to say Milsa David Legluya. Therefore, they rely on Rav and not Milsa David Legluya. Fascinating. Fascinating insight. Not sure everybody would agree with it, but it's a really interesting. That's one possible limitation to Milsa David Legluya. We're going to see some more later. Now, let us now examine, as always when you're talking lomdus, you always have to ask yourself, what's the nafkamina? So yeah, what's the nafkamina? Is it because of Rav? Is it because of Milsa David Legluya? These are our two main strands, the two main bases for the halacha, that we believe somebody who comes and claims to be Jewish, it's either because of Rav or it's because of Milsa David Legluya. Is there a nafkamina between them in lomdus? Here we discover something fascinating. Reb Chaim Volozhner Tshuva from Reb Chaim Volozhner. Source 22. Chut HaMeshulash. V'hayoim novel ha'iyun b'nidon didon be'ima ubita shebou lefanenu. A woman and her daughter presented themselves to the Beis Din, Reb Chaim Volozhner. V'lo yuchlu ledaber b'loshen Yehudis. They couldn't speak Yiddish. They couldn't speak Yiddish. Do we assume that they are Jewish or not? It is true there are Jews who have become assimilated amongst the Goyim, and to the extent that they're not able to speak Yiddish, but that is a tiny minority. Any behavior, any form of observance that is observed by the majority of people, that's enough to use as a chazaka. Rabbi Chaim Volozhner says that you can't, if a Jew arrives and claims to be Jewish, but doesn't, can you imagine a Jew that doesn't speak Yiddish? Have you ever come across a Jew that doesn't speak Yiddish? Mm-hmm. Unbelievable. Who would, obviously, this is the point, you have to see it, and we're going to see Chazon Ish in a minute. In his time and place, you have to understand, a Jew spoke Yiddish. You may have also spoken Russian, you may also have spoken, it's interesting, I don't know whether you've been watching the New York Times hit piece they just did on education in America, which is such a, it's not a Chilul Hashem, it's a hit piece. It has no basis. It's garbage. But that's another shmooze. But one of the things is that they discovered that the first language of many of these hundreds, if not thousands, of children is indeed Yiddish. It's been, so you've got to think to yourself. You've got to sort of take a throwback from the Hasidish enclaves of Williamsburg and wherever, and throw back, 150 years, 200 years in anywhere, all of our Zaydas, I guarantee you, they all spoke Yiddish, no question, no shaila, to the point that so the Rav won't help you, says Rabbi Chaim Volozhner. This is a case where Rav is not going to help you. Milsa David Legluya will help you, but Rav is not going to help you because this person clearly is not part of the Rav, because they're a Jew that doesn't speak Yiddish. What a rare, bizarre species. You obviously belong to the 5%. So we can't use Rav. Whereas you could use Milsa David Legluya. There's enough gemina. Okay? Zog the Chazon Ish. Source 23. Says the Chazon Ish. Hagrach Zal. Shom Kosav Dim Einay Makis Svasa Yehudis. Afsha Imashu Yisrael Einay Nema. Says the Chazon Ish quotes from Chaim Volozhner and says that a Yid that comes along claims to be Jewish and, shock, horror, cannot speak Yiddish. Even though he says Yisrael Einay Nema. Ve'ein kan roin Rav Abayim Faredim B'Toris Yahadus Yisrael. Clearly they're not part of the Rav of people who present themselves and turn out to be Jewish. Therefore you can't say I'm a ger with a migu. Venira dahochi kimlon lemaron zal b'mokim hadidon v'shatoi. Says the Chazon Ish, clearly this was applicable and correct in the time and place that Reb Chaim Volozhner lived. At that period in history, at that place in geography, where that was indeed the reality on the ground. Aval I efsha lichlel klola bozeh. But he says nowadays you cannot take that as an absolute norm, right? The harbe Yehudim shchichim b'sof ha'acheres. Im hein yichidim nitmoyin oy rabim. Many Jews are fluent, and their Muttersprache is another language, if they can speak even Yiddish at all. And one of my biggest culture shocks, I must admit, one of my biggest culture shocks was when I went to Eretz Yisrael. I went to Eretz Yisrael as a bocher. I think the first time I ever went to Eretz Yisrael, I think I was 19. And one of the biggest, to this day, it still resonates a little bit when you go into Ger, or you go into Vishnitz, or you go into... Okay, I learned in Brisk, so of course, she was in Yiddish. Duh. But if you would go into many serious yeshivish, literature, high-level yeshivish places, the shurim are all in Yiddish, all in Ivrit, and everybody's speaking Ivrit. And I had to get my head around the fact that all the Geras, I think, they speak, some of them speak Yiddish as well, but some in the literature world, in Ponovich or whatever, they won't speak Yiddish. They can't speak Yiddish, but they speak Ivrit. And to me, that was a little bit of a culture shock. I don't know if you appreciate that. Coming from Gateshead, where Shia and everything was in Yiddish. Okay, I had to learn Yiddish when I was 15. I went to Yeshiva Ketana, and it was first one or two shows was in English, and you pick it up. You don't need a very extensive vocabulary for Yiddish anyway. In Yeshiva Yiddish, you mix it in with a few bits and pieces, and most of it is what's it? Whatever. You understand? It's not. You've got about 250 words, and you're done. But so he says the Chazon Ish. Reb Chaim Volozhin's idea was right, of course, halachically applicable in his day, in his time, in his place, but no longer. Okay, fine. Okay, we can stop with that. So the Chazon Ish says that doesn't apply. Now, let's move on to. We've got a few more minutes. We're making good progress. So far, what do we have? Where are we up to? Halacha l'maisa, Rabbeisai, Dayanim, Shimona Rabbeisai, Dayanim Mumchim in the Sugya of Birur Yahadus. Yes? Experts in the Sugya of Birur Yahadus. Somebody comes before you today and says, "Hi, I am Jewish." How do you respond? No, silence is not an option.
So
just shoot.
Right. So if we have to ask if he is a Jew at all and has Cheskes Kashrus, then we cannot say that it would be just like Milta the and then we have to say. Sorry,
Rabbi, I don't understand what you're saying. Hi, my name is Chaim Yankelovich. I come from Kharkiv. I come from Uman. I come from whatever. I wish to marry a Jewish girl. Is that okay, Rabbi? Will you marry me? What's your sense based on what we've learned so far? I just want to do a summary, quick précis, where you think we're up to. Was denken Sie?
So now and here, right?
Yeah. Well, what do you think? Just tell me something. Talk to me, guys.
Say, what do you do on this and that Hag?
Mm-hmm. No, why are you asking anything?
Because of...
Okay, let me help you. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be difficult here. But, we've learned something. We're up to a certain point. We've done 23 different Maramakomas, right? We've had a bunch of shiurim on this. Where do you think we're up to? Obviously, we're not finished. I know we're nowhere near finished. By the way, all of this here, all of this is on this topic. Just on this topic. We do research. Sorry?
We have two options. We have to check where are we?
We have to check. Why? I'm going to challenge you, Kobe. Why do we have to check? Is that correct? Do we agree with him? Do you have to check? And if so, why? Why do you say we have to check, Rabbi? Don't you believe me?
No, not to check his words, but assess the situation. If we say we're in Berlin.
Okay.
lot of the people here are non-Jewish.
Okay.
Just this building, maybe all people are Jewish.
Okay.
So that's the one option we have, and then the
Okay.
second option is, does he have any benefit in saying I am Jewish? If she to her, no, yeah.
Whatever. Yeah. Whatever.
If she wants to marry, we could say she has a benefit. She has a reason to be Jewish, to want to be Jewish, besides of being Jewish. You know what I mean?
Okay. So let me step in. I hear what you're saying. Thank you. What you said is logical, makes a lot of sense. If I may, I would say, to summarize, and this is important, I would say so far, the consensus of the Rishonim and the Achronim so far is that if a person presents themselves as being Jewish, they are believed. So that's where I'm up to. Rabbeinu Tam, the Ran, the Ritva, Tosfos in Psachim, okay, different Makar. Not like the Beis Hillel. Maybe the Aruch HaShulchan, might have a bit of a problem with Aruch HaShulchan, but simply if it was a Mishpucha, as we discussed, Raiv Haboin Lefanenu Becheskas Yisrael, I turn out to be Jewish. I have a Raiv. It's either Milsanavi de Legluya, or it's a Raiv. I think, why are you being so horrible, Rabbi? Why are you checking things? Don't you believe me? What do you mean? Who said we? So I'm giving you a hard time, but on the basis of what we've learned so far, I would suggest so far it would appear we don't need to check anything at all. That's what it would appear. I'm going to leave it here for now. And tomorrow we'll open with Rabbi Moshe Feinstein down to Rabbi Yashiv, and we'll see. We'll take this further. Okay? Shkeya.